of it. And what I found is that it's not true, and it was never true. And what happened was a publicist who had been working for Rihanna's record producer put forth that untrue story in order to promote Rihanna, who was young at the time. She was 18, and she had just had her first record released, and this guy was trying to get her attention and find ways to have people take notice of her. And so he fabricated the story of Jay-Z having an affair with Rihanna in order to get her in the press. And
really?
And this is very typical of the kind of backstage business that
Drama.
I love to write about. Yeah, I mean, I love to bring my readers behind the scenes so that they can understand that not everything that they see on stage and not everything that they see in the public eye from a performer is going to be true. And certainly not everything that you read is true unless you read it in one of my books. So,
Yeah.
So I think that it's kind of a cautionary tale, to my fans and my readers, that you can't believe everything that you read, just because you see it in a newspaper or in a magazine, as Michael Jackson said, doesn't make it true. And and that certainly was the case where the Rihanna Jay-Z rumor was concerned.
Right. Can you talk a little bit about the breakup of Destiny's Child, which was a fantastic group, in my opinion?
Yeah, it's sort of a tribute. It definitely, in my view, is a tribute to Matthew Knowles, Beyonce's father, that he was able to make all three girls in Destiny's Child stars. And Michelle Williams of Destiny's Child had the first hit record as a solo artist while the group was still together, when she struck out with a gospel album. And then Kelly Rowland had the next one. And Beyonce wasn't the first to have a solo hit in the group. Beyonce actually was the last one of Destiny's Child members to have a hit record on her own. And what Matthew did was he made sure that Michelle and Kelly would be taken care of, because everybody knew that Beyonce was going to leave eventually. And Matthew Knowles managed to do with Destiny's Child what Berry Gordy was not able to do with the Supremes, which was to launch each girl as a solo artist. And today Michelle has a career, Kelly has a career, and Beyonce has her own career. So when it was time for Beyonce to leave the group, there wasn't the kind of bitterness that you would expect and that you often see in groups, because the girls knew that they had their own careers and they were able to say goodbye to Beyonce without having to also say goodbye to their futures, because they were set. And certainly, Kelly continues to have a great career, Michelle continues to have a great career, and Beyonce, of course, is Beyonce. So I think that says a lot about Matthew Knowles and his vision for the group, that he wanted to make sure that they wouldn't have that kind of jealousy and infighting that a lot of groups have when the lead singer decides to go solo.
Right. That's an excellent point. Now, the book is called Becoming Beyonce. It's available on Amazon.com. And, people look at the book, but a lot of people don't realize that it probably takes you weeks and years, that sometimes, right, to make such an astonishing book as you did.
Well, yeah,
right?
This book took 2 years, and this was fast for me. This was usually we're looking at a 3 to 4 year process, but this book was a 2-year process, and it was every moment of 2 years. And that's the thing about this book, is that this was my toughest book, because there was no roadmap for me to, go to. It reminded me again of Michael, because when I wrote Michael Jackson, there really wasn't anything else out there for me to refer to, just for even the minor information, the minor details that writers go to other books to find. And then you build your own research from that point. But with Beyonce, there was nothing. And so it took a lot of effort and a lot of energy to be able to tell her story in such a comprehensive fashion.
Documentary she made. What do you think of it?
Well, there were elements, as I wrote in the book, there were a few moments in the HBO documentary that I felt were revealing. But, like most celebrities, especially today, Beyonce is very concerned about her public image and about, controlling the way that she's perceived by others. And this is nothing new, of course. People who are in show business have been concerned about their public images, going all the way back to the 1920s. It's nothing new at all. It's just that but it is the way it is. It's not even a pejorative commentary about a celebrity being concerned about his or her public image. It's not even pejorative, because that's really what show business is all about. It's about public relations. It's about image making. It's about being conscious of the way that you're perceived by others. So her documentary is exactly that. It's very self-conscious about the way that she's being perceived by those viewing it. And that's why when a person like me comes along, my job is to sort of pierce that veil. My job is sort of to invade the privacy of the celebrity and give my readers something more than what they're going to get from an authorized documentary or an authorized story or an authorized biography. And that's my job. So we all have our jobs in this business, and Beyonce, I think she did a great job with the documentary being what it was. It was her version
she told
of
Oprah
her life.
It was I'm sorry to interrupt you, but she did tell Oprah that it was kind of healing for her, and it felt good to, I guess, let out some of her personal stuff. I recently watched the one show she did with Oprah, proceeding that documentary.
Well, I think in some respects that's probably true, because she did talk about the break with her father and how difficult it was separating from him, and the fact that at that time the documentary was being made, the two of them were not in each other's lives at all, and that was difficult for her as well. And to have an opportunity to be able to sort of express that, I think was probably therapeutic for her.
Absolutely, no question. We're talking to J. Randy Taraborrelli. Now, the book is called Becoming Beyonce, available on Amazon.com. Now, you said you wrote 18 other books. Can you tell my audience about some of those books, besides Beyonce, of course, and, like Marilyn Monroe and Madonna that you eventually wrote, and, what inspired you to write about those people?
Well, each of my 18 books, I've had 14 New York Times bestsellers out of 18 books that I've written, and each one has a history and a background and a purpose in my life, and a reason for being. Marilyn Monroe was somebody that I felt had a story that had not yet been told, and that story was about her and her mother. And that's what inspired me to write The Secret Life of Marilyn Monroe, which was a Lifetime miniseries this last May, starring Susan Sarandon as Marilyn's.
Also something on Reels, I thought, right? I was reading.
Well, we're doing.
Reels.
We're doing After Camelot, which is one of my Kennedy books. We're doing that for Reels next year. And that's starring Katie Holmes as Jackie Kennedy. And it's a great opportunity for me to take my books and then produce movies based on them, which is what I'm doing now. I was a producer on the Marilyn movie. I'm the executive producer of After Camelot, starring Katie Holmes, next year. And we're doing a biopic on another one of my books at Lifetime in August of next year. So it's a great opportunity to take the story and tell it in another way, in a dramatization, on television. So, we're doing that as well now, and it's a lot of fun.
Yeah. Now, you being a writer for so long, is there any good writers that you look up to?
Not really. The thing for me, Jordan, is that I don't do a lot of reading. It's a shame because I became a writer because I love to read, but
well, you
now
can hear it,
that I've been a writer for so long. I mean, I've been writing for almost 30 years. That it's work
But you
for me.
couldn't have been around when Marilyn Monroe was in her prime, right? So was
that
a little difficult?
No, I wasn't. I wasn't there for that at all. Not really. I think that history is history is written by historians often who weren't there at the time. And if you have the source material and you're able to recreate a time and place, that's all the better. I mean, I wasn't around for most of the Kennedy experience either, or for Grace Kelly when I did the Grace Kelly book. Or even for most of Elizabeth Taylor's life and times, when I wrote that book. But that doesn't stop a biographer or an historian from being able to tell the story. It just means that you've got to do more research.
Oh, yeah, no question. And with this book, that Becoming Beyonce, would you say you've reached a different, younger audience as opposed to Marilyn Monroe and the Kennedys? Would you say that there's a younger audience to this book than, let's say, Marilyn Monroe or Kennedy's or Cher or somebody like that?
Well, that's a good question, Jordan. And yeah, I definitely think so. I have found that the audience, the demographic for this book is much younger. And also what I've found is that the demographic for this book isn't used to this kind of biography. And it's taken me some time to be able to reach this younger audience with this kind of book, because this is an old school biography. It's a big, thick book, and today, the way the world works, young people are used to sort of pointing and clicking their way through our culture on the internet, and not really devoting a lot of time to anything. And my books demand a lot of your time. If you're going to sit down and read my book, it's going to take some effort. And when I wrote about Michael Jackson in 1990, there was no internet. So the only way that you were able to find out about Michael was through my work or on my TV appearances, or it was very different than today, where you can just Google a person's name.
You were on Geraldo talking about your book back in I think I was watching on YouTube, I believe, in maybe 89, 90, talking about MJ, right?
Sure. I mean, I did many hundreds of television shows about MJ. Back in the late 1980s into the 1990s, when that was the only way that you were ever going to see me, was on TV. Now today, I'm all over the internet, and there's YouTube, and if you want to know about Beyonce, you can, put her name in Google, and a million articles will come up. And so it's much more difficult today to capture the imagination and the attention of a young audience. You have to really put in a lot of work, and we've been able to do that with Beyonce, but it has not been easy. It's been a little bit more difficult than I thought it was going to be to reach her fan base, because they really don't want to read. They want to be able to. It's a visual, audio visual society. It's videos. It's a quicker fix, and then and it's a lot more information being sort of piled on at one time. In other words, I think that today's young audience is multitasking like never before, and they're getting so much information, but yet they're not sitting still long enough to read a 500-page book about somebody. So it's definitely got its challenges, and we're learning about those challenges now, because this is the first time I've done a book with this young demographic in mind. So this has been a learning experience for me as well.
does social media hurt or help your book sales?